Welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right. Thank you so much for joining us on another hour to have a wonderfully engaging and meaningful conversation that is going to help us continue to transform ourselves and the world around us. Today's conversation is going to be about inclusion and how do we build an inclusive society with everybody having a sense of belonging. So before I bring in my amazing guest, I want to share 3 important nuggets for us to take into today's conversation. The first one is our humanity starts with our being. The very essence of who we are is our being, and that's where our humanity starts. Therefore, take a moment to connect with your being to purposely channel all you're doing. When we are not connected authentically to who we are and show up as who we are, then we are unable to channel everything we do because everything is going to look fake. So let's make sure we're centered. Take a deep breath and get centered in who you are. And then we show up in a way that is authentic and it's influential and it is impactful. The second nugget I want you to take into the conversation is inclusion comes from the kindness of heart. It's not that you're doing anybody a favor, it's because you embody that kindness and you're able to see that things and situations impact different people differently. Kindness is a precious gift. It is so precious that it has to be dispensed generously to heal yourself and others. Kindness is something we can only give if we had it for ourselves. So whenever we run into people who can't show up with kindness, take a moment and think about how much they themselves might be suffering inside, that they have no kindness for themselves. They are so hard on themselves. They are so unhappy with themselves. That's why they can't give it. They don't have it. This is why the ancient scriptures and books and philosophies talk about it's better to kill people with kindness and give it to them to fill their cup so that when they need it, they can take it and heal themselves. Our lesson is kindness is something we need to give first to ourselves and then from our cup fill up the others. And don't ever forget to be kind to yourself. The third nugget we want to take into the conversation is embrace the strength and beauty of diversity. There is a lot of strength and beauty in diversity. Imagine going to a garden and there's only one kind of plant with the same type of leaf, color, shape, texture, everything repeated. And there might even not be any flowers because there's only leaf. Or imagine sitting down to eat day after day after day, and you're eating the same thing cooked the same way. Remember the movie Groundhog Day? That gets very old very soon, right? So think about the beauty and the strength in diversity. What is different is what makes things vibrant. So beauty of our differences enhances our shared experiences. Embrace it wholeheartedly and don't diminish who you are and how you show up. Celebrate your difference, your uniqueness, because that is also part of what makes our life vibrant. As we are talking about the kindness being precious and the importance of being inclusive, I am so happy and super excited to bring our special guest, Precious Fuller. And yes, she is precious. And she is going to help us engage in the conversation of building inclusive communities. Precious, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Such an honor to have you. And Precious comes to us from the United States. And she is a leading edge socialpreneur, passionate about enhancing the human condition. Remember, the human condition is what we're talking about. As a executive officer of Equanimity Partners International, she's an accomplished professional with more than 20 years of experience as an educator and professional specializing in diversity, equity, inclusion, human relations, and strategic planning with public relations. As a diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist, Precious works to establish diverse and inclusive cultures in support of all of humanity. So honored to have you, Precious. And as we get started, I want for us to take a moment and have you talk about how you got to where you are today in terms of wanting to drive the change in culture and how we show up and bringing inclusion and diversity and equity, all of this into not just our workplace, but in our society. How did you
Absolutely.
get to that point?
Well, first, I would like to start off. I've been informed. I want to say happy Thai Pongal. Did I say it right?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, yes. So happy for that. And how did I get started? I can say it's a lifetime of receiving kindness, kindness from family, kindness from those close to me. So if my cup is full or relatively so, I can give from that. In addition, when I see what's going on, and as I've seen the things that have gone on during the pandemic, I see the impact of having with not having inclusive environments. I see that impact as an African American woman, a Black woman, whichever term people are most comfortable with. I have experienced things generationally, even. So I have a heightened awareness because of being on a different side. Then I get to see how people are harmed, how it can end fatally, particularly in my community, more for Black males than for me. And it's not okay. Then I recognize and look farther around the globe and I realize they have the same things, but different because the same negative impact affects people all over the globe. We can call it by different names. They can have slightly different skin tone, but it's not okay. We just cannot kill one another. And as an empath and as a highly sensitive person, or abbreviated HSP, I recognize these things when they happen. They stay with me longer, and I realize this is so not okay because I'm unnerved. I'm not good. I have to get my health, my strength, and my direction as to what can I do. And I realize as I get some strength, I realize other people need the same thing. As I get direction, I realize other people need the same thing. We cannot self-destruct. And those who see what's happening, excuse me, we cannot sit idly by and just hope people get it right one day. Hope it just stops. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I feel we should fight for one another and this planet like it belongs to us and like they belong to us because they do. We are interconnected. We are dependent or interdependent. We just cannot do these things. So my point is, when people have a real understanding and when they have empathy, they cannot stay in those self-destructive places. I want to get his name right. The gentleman that joined us last week from Belize, his last name
Bernard,
started with a P.
Bernard Canton.
Thank you. Yes, that's it. He says there's poverty of more than just financial. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Our culture, our communities, our society, our world has they're impoverished. Many are when it comes to understanding and empathy. And my point is, we got to infuse that in there because we have to know that we're harming ourselves when we harm one another by excluding them and allowing what results from that ultimately can end in fatalities. That is not okay. It's got to be stamped out. It's got to be acknowledged, and people have to be held accountable and then brought in to a better way. So I'm passionate about it because I see what it does. I see that it takes lives, it takes family members from people, and that's not okay. So I can't get those people back, but we can honor them by doing the right thing for the rest of us who have to share this world together. We got to do better. We have to do better.
Beautifully said. Because if we don't get this right, we are going to lose more of what is precious for us. And thank you so much for putting all of these moving pieces in a succinct way, Precious, because it is not just the lives that are taken, right? It's the lives that have to suffer through that loss. It is the guilt. It is the fear. Living in fear itself is not healthy because then you die piece by piece every day, right? And then when we go into the workplace, all of who we are comes into the workplace, and these toxicities in nicely dressed suits show up at work too. So the work you are doing is inherently valuable, inherently life altering. And what we need to do is continue to have these conversations, because first step to a 12-step program is to stand up and acknowledge that we do have problems,
Right.
that we do need to work together. So as you work with your corporate clients, and as you work with professionals, and as you engage socially, what are 2 or 3 elements that you share with folks to start thinking about how they recognize and how they show up differently? Because everything starts from each of us, right? No matter how much tell somebody else, we need to show up. So what are those 2 or 3 things folks can take and keep with them in their minds and in their hearts, so that they can start showing up differently? Because we can each make a difference.
Absolutely. Well, for me, I believe it starts with the tea. Like you drink the tea, the information, the scoop. Well, the tea starts with truth. And I intentionally use that word. And I know it's a loaded word because people feel that it's relative. It depends on what you think, where you come from. I'm speaking of universally when it comes to humanity. The truth that I operate from, and those who work with me, is the fact that it's self evident that we are all created equal. It's not even to be proven, it's self evident. And if we start with that, that's a powerful starting point, because then that means now let's look around what in your environment, in your scope of influence, what does not reflect that equality? What is unfair? What needs to be balanced and adjusted to reflect the truth? Because I'll just take a quick caveat. In looking at things around us in the world, if we go with that premise, which I do, that we're all created equal, why are our circumstances and our outcomes so inequitable? Why are they so different? Something is wrong. So we have to find a way to reason that. Is it the people are just inherently one way or the other? If we're created equal, why such contrasts? So my point is, when we recognize that there's equality, we've got to right some things because our circumstances are not equal. They are not fair across the board. So we start with truth, and then we bring in equity, which is the fairness factor. And then we have to bring accountability. It's not enough to just say it, well, yeah, ho hum, yeah, this is true. That makes good sense. No, we live it. And then we put accountability structures in place to help us hold ourselves accountable. So it's not all on us. We have the systems in place to support the fairness that reflects the fact that we are all created equal. So that's definitely where we start. That's the middle, that's the end as well. We keep that before us and we let our actions reflect out of that truth.
I love that. So T, truth, equity, and accountability.
Yes.
And as long as I'm a tea drinker, so I will remember this, right? Every cup of tea, every sip of tea I take, I will remember this. And what you said just resonates with me so well, Precious, because I come from a culture where we greet each other this way, right? We say vanakkam or namaste, and it literally means the light in my soul sees the love, light, and truth in yours. And at that point of recognition, we are one. And therefore, my soul honors your soul. That's what this means, right? So when you wished me happy Thai Pongal with, the thoughtfulness and mindfulness that I am celebrating my Thanksgiving, and I wished you back this way, we connect, right? And it's a very COVID-friendly greeting. In the Western world, people say sorry or thank you this way, but that's not what it means. It has a much deeper meaning.
Yes.
But even in a culture where we wish each other this way, there is so much inequity, there is so much lack of belonging. I come from a Hindu Buddhist country where the Buddhist politics and Buddhist government decided they were going to kill the Hindu people because they decided the country should be theirs, even though the Hindus are the natives, right? And so this hate, this inequity, the creation of you are different, therefore you don't belong, and this should be mine. And I want all my toys, and I don't want you to have your toys, I want your toys too. This comes from a very toxic place, and no culture, no society, no people are immune to it. So keeping in mind that we embrace the T, the truth,
Yes.
the
Yes.
equity, and the accountability, how do we start breaking down these generational prejudices? What comes to mind is the Andy Griffith episode. These two families have been feuding for so long. They don't know why they're feuding. They just take guns and shoot each other, right? And finally, it's solved because the boy and the girl from the two families fall in love and they elope and get married. Okay. So, how do we put an end to the prejudice that triggers people to say certain folks don't belong? That lack of belonging is what triggers everything else, right? We're so happy to embrace cats and dogs of all colors and shapes and sizes, but we can't do that with our own fellow men. How can we start and trigger that sense of belonging to break that cycle of
Yeah.
generational?
Yeah, you said something too with those animals and how people love them and they can come in all shapes and sizes and types. But humanity, your own species, and not only what you just described is that what I want to add, you cannot sustain a culture that way. And it's reflected all around the world. It's not sustainable. We are self-destructing ourselves when we do that. And I will just push a little in saying, I don't always know. This is the way my mind works, that people are saying, you're so different, so I need to subdue you and conquer you. I think there are sometimes, I think the root of it is they're so selfish, they're so insecure that they need to be elevated. I've learned along the way that when we parent, we can do our children just as much damage by neglect as overindulgence. Overindulging and over praising, and you shape their thinking. They almost think the sun rises and sets on them, and that's not a reality. So when they go out into the world and this doesn't reflect back, or even at home they haven't built the skills to function with real life because they're mind altered, we've done them a damage. And to know how far that damage is, we don't always know. And it's not always irreparable because you have to have an understanding and a desire to change. It's deep. Similarly, people that equip themselves as the gods of this world and say, I want to be this, that, and the other. I still think it comes from insecurity because I don't even know that they believe what they're saying initially. They have to justify their behavior some way. So since there's such this need for validation, for acknowledgement, for esteem, I got to find a way to do that. So I find someone who's different. I need someone to celebrate me. I need someone to bow down. And so they find people, they find circumstances, whoever they feel are inferior in the sense, I think, of force. Because there's no such thing as inferior as far as people, but as far as ability to sustain themselves. I think of indigenous cultures where, you have one weapon and we have a gun. That's the only difference. You're not as strong or wiser, healthier people. You just happen to have different equipment that has a different impact. So I think it's similar. It's unfortunate, but it seems to be in our natures that until we are taught better, until our parents, our families, our communities teach us what you just described, my appreciation for who you are connects with an appreciation for who I am. We're interconnected, we're one. Until we learn that, we are selfish, childish, like on kindergarten. You're as a child, you're taught simple rules of how to play fair. When you have established yourself in your environment, in your school, and then someone new comes to the school, you kind of sometimes look at them. You don't know what you're going to do yet. What do my friends think? Are they going to accept this person in? It's so primal. And then hopefully in an environment where the teacher says, well, look, let's welcome so-and-so. Come sit with us. We're so happy to have you. They're setting a standard for what's expected. And then the children who are dependent upon that teacher, who respect that teacher and have been taught and counseled by that, they kind of fall in. Hey, and they're welcoming because they're encouraged to do so. That's modeled. What we have modeled is the opposite. We've said one thing, but been very hypocritical. We teach our children one behavior, but are very hypocritical. It's even hard to teach history because people recognize their hypocrisy and they don't want to share it. They're gatekeepers of that information because we don't want to go into how deep this really goes. We don't want to say the Hindus are really the natives or whatever the case may be around the globe. We just want to justify our selfish acts. And I'm not trying so much to insult people in this space. I'm really not. I'm insulting that ideology. Like, how dare us? And then the harm that we cause. And like you mentioned too, the people who are left after their loved ones have been harmed, they're changed forever. So you say, how do we change this? How do we begin? We've got to acknowledge the truth for what it is. That is wrong. That will never be right, and it cannot be sustained. There will always be conflict in environments where the case is big me and little you. There will always be fears on both sides, because I don't know if one day you're going to rise up and get me. And doing things, it creates vicarious trauma. So I'm traumatizing those who are subject to me, but I'm also traumatizing myself. I cannot possess that kind of energy and harm myself by harming other people and be okay, be happy, whole. No way. You're creating destruction of self from the inside out, and it's passing on generationally also. So we will never be okay as long as that remains. We've got to call that out and shut it down every opportunity we have. We have to create a coalition of those wise people, and like what you're doing, who think correctly, who are founded in truth and the equality of man, and are willing to do something and stand up and say, no more. And then there will at some point have to be some accountability for that. We've got to acknowledge what has been and create what needs to be. It's not like, well, okay, the past is over. Let's just go forward. Yes, we go forward, but we go forward in acknowledgement and recognition so we don't revisit those evils again. So until we can call it out, and it's not a people thing, it's a mindset thing, because people are easily defensive and retaliatory if we think you're talking about me. We're going to talk about what's possessing you, what has allowed this. We're addressing this, we're calling it out, and we will replace it with the truth. And the truth, in a sense, then, it helps the perpetrators of these crimes as well. It helps give them a sense of belonging where it doesn't have to be with those who have this view. One quick short story. I remember reading an article, and a person who was, excuse me, a former white supremacist, and he was saying how he came into that. He was poor. He didn't have much. I don't think he came from a strong family, and he needed a sense of belonging. And that culture, that group, someone reached out to him in that space. Huh, I'm somebody. I'm kind of top of the crop. It's a hierarchy, and I'm placed at the top. No one ever told me that. The fact that I'm poor and almost blind and wretched and miserable, I just kind of mix that with some other terms from even scripture, as we see ourselves, are not always able to see ourselves. Excuse me, please. He recognized that I have a group that will say that I'm something. Unfortunately, this group was destructive. It has fatal qualities in it, but I don't know that. I just want being accepted. And he went down a path. He went down a path, and it was a bad one. However, he came to the light, and he came to real friendships and real acceptance that, yes, you are valuable, not because you belong to this harmful, hateful group full of lies and misinformation, but because of your humanity. As you share that with other humans, you really are valuable. It does not matter the amount of money you have, what family you come from, what status they have. You really are something. So as we replace these evil systems based in misinformation and lies, replace it with the truth. The truth does something, it's its own power. So replacing misinformation with the truth is the power that we need. We call it out, and we create the spaces that are welcoming and sustaining for all of us, because the other is not sustainable. It's destructive, and it's harmful, and it ends in fatalities. It ends in frustrations, wars, and damaged people. Because how can we be okay? We cannot protect our loved ones when our homes and families are separated, we're ripped apart. So we have to replace it with the truth by calling it what it is, and create a welcoming environment for all who choose to come and be a part of that. Make that inviting and invite all.
Absolutely. And truth, like sunlight, is a natural disinfectant. So
Mhm.
let's embrace that. Let's be the sunlight everywhere we walk into, because the soul that resides within us has that light, right? So I love what you're saying. Take your light and let it shine and let it disinfect, so that all the toxicity is eliminated from the inside out. And when we
Yes.
radiate, we attract other individuals to want to find out, hey, where's that light coming from? Why is
Mhm.
this person so happy? Why is this person so successful? And use that as a catalyst to drive change. Now, in the workplace today, I'm going to pivot a little bit. In the workplace today, we're dealing with this lack of sense of belonging and the lack of inclusion that then leads to lack of equity and lack of diversity. I personally believe that the West, because the Western Anglo-Saxon culture wants to know what the result is before they can address the issue. I come from the Asian environment where we want to address the root cause and then tend towards a solution and an outcome, because the solution and an outcome is going to evolve. It cannot be understood right up front because it's not yet experienced, right? So in the Western world, we put diversity first, equity second, inclusion third. I flip it. I say, create a sense of belonging to include people, then diversity will happen and equity will happen and diversity will come. We can't put the cart before the horse. So as I'm looking at what we need to do in our global work world today, where we can work from anywhere and the world of work is changing, how do we get past all of these barriers we have in terms of gender, race, ethnicity, religion, language, even the accent, even people who appear to be of the same gender, same race, same color, they differentiate between shades of their color, right? So this is not unique to any one people. It is inherent within a group of people themselves, even in families, right? I come from a culture where if you are fairer, then you get a better groom in an arranged marriage culture. And if you're darker, no boy wants to marry you. And you're told this over and over and over again, right? So there are so many preconditioning going on, even within families. Parents who are supposed to love the kids are in some ways influencing. All of this shows up at work. How do we start peeling the onion and creating work as a place where people can find a sense of belonging? Because if people don't belong, there is no positive outcome and the business is not sustainable.
That's loaded, and yet I love the simplicity of it as well. I don't believe we can really do it without addressing the first. Yeah, I don't even think when it comes in general, let's say corporately, and I'm not speaking in 100% because there are exceptions to the rules. I don't think people really want it. I just think it's a matter of a check the box. This is the new thing, the new flavor of the month, and money is tied to it. But I don't think the desire is necessarily there anyway, which is a challenge for me because I choose to speak. Um, I love to be a part of those who want to be a part of the change. So if you're just going through the motions, that's not going to result in anything. So to me, it has to go back to the basics. Even in business, you've got to go back to the basics that we're dealing with people. That's our prized commodity, people, and having an understanding of them. I will also address what you mentioned briefly as far as the family. When it comes to that, and that's a thing called colorism within the African American community. Um, I do not believe that is innate to me, and it's you cannot prove it. How is one tone better than the other? I have in my family different tones, and one of my favorite people, he's no longer with us, my grandfather. Oh, just as black and smooth and dark, and I loved it. Everybody, we all did. It was just it's beauty. Who can refute that? Like, who are you that can say that's not beautiful? Where'd you come from? Who did you create? However, when we have these views that have infiltrated our families and our communities, because they have, it came from somewhere. So again, replace that with the truth. I know where it came from in our community and how far it reached back as far as in America. I know where it came from. Call that out, the root again. So when we're just dealing with the symptoms, we're frustrated and irritated and we're blame gaming. How can you do that? Why? And that's not true. The point is, where'd you get that lie from? If it's not true, let's replace it with the truth that in the rainbow, all the colors are beautiful. Who can determine which one is better, the violet or the red? Who determines that? There's no such thing. So you cannot validate that one tone is better than the other. But when this happens, these people have been fed a message. It has come from someplace. Find that out to the extent you need to, so you can replace it and realize, well, that's where I got that from. Huh, that's probably where my mom, or that's what has been taught. Who taught that and for what purpose? Someone made up something because it's made up. The point is, it's not innate that to have one brown skinned dark baby, that she's not gorgeous beyond belief, that he is not just the cream of the crop. And then to have a fairer skinned one, that that one is any less and definitely no better. So that's just not true. Again, we're going to go back, we have to acknowledge the truth. So we have to look at all of these false beliefs and teachings and realize whoever started them, it was for some kind of selfish purpose. It was some kind of justification of mistreatment of one over the other. So whoever started this, they're dead now. Those people are dead and gone, but their legacy of misinformation and of harm has lasted. We get to replace that and call it for what it is. So in the workplace, I think a lot of it would begin with leadership and doing maybe coaching that they wouldn't think, this is part of my business coaching, this is part of equity. And a big section of it deals with our beliefs when it comes to people. Because if we don't, that's where everything starts. We're not operating in businesses with just stuff. Because even if we use stuff, people have to function there. People have to promote the stuff. Some other people have to buy the stuff. We're still dealing with people. We will never be able to get away from that. And in acknowledging that, we've got to do better about our people understanding and our people appreciation. So we start with and acknowledge that people are people. That means we're all in that same boat together, that we can do better. And we just have to learn what's required and be held accountable. And then we forgive, not approve. When we've done harm, we don't approve of that and justify it. Say, oh, well, that's because, let's change course. And so I don't believe in some ways, and it's difficult for me, I can disclose in teaching principles to systems that don't really care, to systems that are steeped so deep, they don't even really know why they operate the way they are. They just feel like money is the bottom line. And whatever I'm doing and however the systems have been set up, maybe it's favoring me. So I'm going to keep it the way it is. It's really not favoring you either. And it's not sustainable and it's harming you. You may have a check now. You may have some zeros behind some numbers. Excuse me. But the only constant is change. And you can't stop change. So which side of change do you want to be on? On the truth side or the side that claws to keep things the same because they're so afraid of retribution? They're so afraid of what that change can look like. Be a part of it, to be a part of shaping what that needs to look like in your environment and your culture. But it has to start with the fact that people are people and that my soul values yours. So when it comes to teaching any of these things, that's got to be first. To me, the rest, I don't know, maybe superfluous. I don't even know how much it'll be beneficial. And can it be sustained if it's not rooted in the reality of people being people and that we're equal? If your systems don't reflect that truth, the rest is just timed.
Absolutely.
Time before it times out.
Absolutely. And beautifully said, because our beliefs are really what ultimately becomes our destiny. I couldn't emphasize on these words enough, because each of our beliefs go in with us to our workplace. Our beliefs shape our thoughts shape our words drive our actions, actions become our behavior leads to our values, and our values are our destiny. So if we want to change our destiny, all we have to do is change our belief. And wonderfully said, Precious. I would love to open this up to our live audience right now and see if we could have a good 10 to 12-minute conversation about what their thoughts are, what questions they have for you, and what insights they want to add. So let's open this up.
Sure.
Dr. Huey, I see you here. Would you like to share your thoughts? Because this is a space you engage in on a regular basis.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Excellent presentation. I think it's DEI is a topic that I've actually discussed in other conferences before, and it always comes back to me is what are we doing today when it comes to transparency? I know I'm working on some areas in regards to psychological safety, that I feel like is an important component of DEI because, ultimately we talk about DEI, but I don't think we can truly have DEI until we feel safe in an environment. It's like today, like in the last conference I was at, I talk about DEI as kind of more of a check in the box activity today with many organizations. A lot of announcements of DEI officers that are hired within organizations. That's the first thing they do. They post it on their social media. And I always say to myself, is like, we need more than this. We need actions and publishing, transparency of publishing, numbers on the workforce of the people that within your organizations and providing that proof, because I think lots of times we get organizations to provide a lot of fluffy words and rosy words in their reports or their annual statements, and it really doesn't offer much value in regards to DEI. I think the value really comes in is once you put the concrete numbers down, you are saying you're transparent and you're proud of your numbers. And unfortunately, today, I don't see that's happening with a lot of organizations. I see more of announcements of these type of activities that, in the grand scheme of things, I really don't know what your organization is like, so it doesn't really give me any really true sense. So transparency and having an environment that provides you to kind of be open and be able to discuss about differences without retaliation, feeling safe in that work environment is so important. But I really don't see a lot of that happening. I think I know it's like the trendy thing that we're seeing today with organizations, but when it comes to proof and providing that authentic DEI, I still think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I am hopeful that we can provide that proof better than we are today. And I think one of the ingredients to this is going to be, data and the numbers behind a lot of the things we see organizations today. And I always tell people, it's like, if the numbers weren't so important, and they don't, and then they're not afraid of it, they will publish it. But if you look at organizations today, many do not publish any of their DEI numbers. And all they do is, like I said, just put a couple of fancy words in there and call it a day. And we hire some DEI officer. So I'm still, like I said, I still feel like there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this arena. So I'm hoping that we're going to get to a point where some organizations are going to be a fearless organization, where they will provide those numbers to be the leader in this, and not just all this fancy check in the box activity I'm seeing today. And I'm not still happy with what I'm seeing today, is that I don't see the proof.
True. Totally reflect reality. Go ahead, Precious.
Well, that data is necessary, because it helps define what we claim we have. But for me, I'll even say a step beyond data. There are some things that are felt, that are experienced, and the results are still evolving. Is if you have a healthy family unit, these children, or the relationships that come from them, they are still evolving. We don't even know yet what they will be, but we know when we welcome someone in our environment, they can feel it. We don't have to say what our rules are. Bedtime is at this time for my child. I make sure they only can eat this. I give them plenty of hugs. We share apologies around here if we mess up. I allow them to explore their own interests. Like, we don't have to say what we do, because each family can do it a bit differently. But the result is felt and it's seen. There's something different about certain people, and there's a reason for that. There's something different about certain environments when they live these principles. So even if I have the right numbers to showcase that I have this many of this group, I have this many of this group, and I have this many, and these are the salaries, there's a place for some of that, particularly, well, just there's a place for that. There's also a place that cannot be checked in the box. What's your retention like? more so than that, what's the engagement like? Because sometimes people stay depending on the circumstances because they don't have another option yet or their limitations. But when people stay because they want to, you feel that energy. You can tell the difference in some interviews. When you meet with some people, there's a connect. They value me and I value them, and it's just explosive energy from the beginning. There are other people who may be checking the box. So I will even say there are times you can check a box correctly, but the environment is not reflective of that. There is not so much the psychological safety, because even if I'm present on a team and I'm a number for you because I'm able to allow you to check this box, I don't fully show up unless I feel valued, unless I really, and not so much that I'm always holding back. It's not a natural space for the development of me until I'm in a place that welcomes and celebrates that. And so having data is value based, but being what you believe, that's phenomenal. And that
Absolutely.
is, those results they don't stop. They're ad infinitum because they continue to go. So the truth of the crux of the matter and the value of people and how you live that out, that is for me even deeper than the numbers by themselves.
Very true. And that's why when
Absolutely.
medical or other studies, we look at both qualitative and quantitative, and we do a longitudinal study, right? You want
Yes.
to do a study over 15, 20, 30 years to see the ramifications and after effects, because something that looks good today may be totally toxic tomorrow. So very well said. Go
Yes.
ahead, Wolf.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Precious. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. And I've only known you for a week, but I already am a big fan, right?
Yes.
So I appreciate what you were saying. A couple of thoughts came to mind with Mr. Buey, and you were talking. I'm sorry, I hope you say your name properly. But yeah, there is this. I was in a corporation for 27 years, a very large Fortune 100 corporation. And I saw the evolution from let's just get the numbers to let's just get the right representation, and then the right representation at the right levels, right? And we eventually evolve in that direction. So I believe they do have a pretty good strategy, as well as having role models to look forward to. I think probably 15 years into that journey is when I first felt like there were people that looked like me that were in positions of power, if you will, of authority, that I could say, oh, wow, there's a chance for me to get there. And not only, and I remember very clearly because it was a young gentleman, African American, who brought us all together in one of the manufacturing facilities, and we were all from different backgrounds: Hispanic, Indian, Iranian. And he said, "No, we're gonna create a group which is we call the we call it ICE because the International Cultural Exchange, right? But we were in the South, so we call it the ICE. But that gave us all a lot of power, knowing that this gentleman, his name is Eric, kind of got us all together, and we looked up to Eric because he was kind of in position of authority and power, and he was just a regular person that we can, be him somewhere, or maybe even someday, and maybe even higher, right? So you need those inspirational leaders that are, and they're not just put in place because that would be failure, right? That they earn the way to get to that place, and they become leaders that you can follow and know that there's something to follow there. And then the other portion that you mentioned, Precious, that I was just as excited to hear you say, is when you look at a culture, you walk into a room, they might have all the numbers, right? Or may not have the numbers, but you get the smell of the place. I don't know if you heard that term before, but I can walk into an organization and just smell it. And Dr. Cass and I have done that before into many locations in the last place that we worked together, where you could smell the culture. You could smell how things really get done. Because if you look at it, this definition of cultures is how things get done. You can, like you said, Precious, somebody can tell this is how we do things in the house, or this is when everybody goes to bed. But when the reality happens, when you see what happens, that's the culture, right? And that's what gets rewarded, and also what gets, punished, if you will. So I think that those are the things that, as the rest of this country or any countries continue to evolve, is having that representation at different levels of true leaders that can bring the other ones up. That has been my experience, and that's what I try to be when I put in a position of some influence.
Beautifully said, Wolfgang. I want to bring Robin in for a moment to
Yeah.
share her thoughts, and Precious, I will let you sum it up in a minute or two. Go ahead, Robin.
There you go. Oh, thanks so much. I loved your passion and your insight. I'll just go real quick. There was a political cartoon that came out some time ago when maybe last summer or something, where it showed people trying to look over a fence at a baseball game. And one person was looking over the fence just fine. Another person was real short. Another person was even shorter. They couldn't see over the fence. And so they gave one person a box, and the other person 2 boxes, and they could see over the fence. Well, someone pointed out this is not accurate. It's not that they can't see over the fence because they're too short. It's because they're standing in a hole. Well, I've never seen anyone redraw the political cartoon to see someone standing in a hole, and that's why they can't see over the fence. And so my question is, the process needs to be helping the person get out of the hole and then filling the hole up so you can stand there and you can see over the fence. So my question is, there are many attempts to help someone get out of the hole, and who's responsible for filling in the hole, that actually are not enabling and enabling in a positive sense, nor ennobling, the word that Cass uses in her titles of her books. So my question, from your personal experience and observation, what are ways that people who are not standing in the hole can help someone in the hole get out of the hole, and help them together fill the hole in ways that are respectful, in ways that are dignifying, in ways that gives them strengths and skills?
Okay, well, I appreciate your question. First of all, I've seen a rendition of that same cartoon, and I've seen it somewhat differently, almost the same, but somewhat differently, with the key component that the fence is like a wooden picket fence, and they're trying to see based on their heights. When it was replaced, that fence was replaced with the kind of fence that you can see through. So there were no need for boxes to stand on because we changed the fence. Similarly, now with your explanation with the holes, I think it's important to start with those holes were created. I wasn't born to naturally stand in a hole and someone else to stand on level ground. Someone dug that hole, and for whatever reason I'm there. I have not seen that one. But my point is, replace what makes for the inequity. Stop digging holes for some people and others don't have the hole. Or in what I saw, change the fence. The wooden fence, you cannot see through it unless you're trying to look through the slats, one eyeball open. But if you change that fence, then we can all see. It doesn't matter our heights. So when there are obstructions, those obstructions were put there because if we just focus on, oh, this person needs some help, let me help, we can run a risk of having like a savior mentality, or thinking that we are just equipped to be the helpers. We're just the helpful group. I just happen to be born in this wonderful group. And unfortunately, these poor people, that's not the case. That was intentional. Fix the issue as opposed to fixing the people, because the people are not naturally, one may not naturally be more broken than the other. And in some instances, some may be healthier. They just have unhealthier circumstances and conditions that they've had to fight through. But they're equipped with some other characters and some traits that maybe others are not. So my point is, why is the hole there?
Yeah.
And then the other thing, replace the fence. Just tear that wooden old one down and give the kind of fence that we can all see through, no matter the height. No one has an advantage or disadvantage. We have the same opportunity to view the game or view whatever's beyond the fence.
Yeah, that is brilliant. Brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you for those amazing insights and questions. And Precious, thank you so much. And you're right. Get to the root cause, address the root cause. And if the game is rigged and the referees are playing a rigged game, then let's change the rules of the game. Let's change the lens through which we look. Einstein said this beautifully. Do not judge a fish's capability by its power to climb a tree, because the fish is going to live his own whole life thinking he's stupid. The fish was never meant to climb a tree. right? So honor everybody in terms of what they are meant to be and give that space and create that level playing field. And let's make sure our humanity leads, not our fear, not our need to control, not our insecurities. It has been such an honor and pleasure to have this hour of conversation with Precious and our Goldilocks community. And we would love to continue this conversation and other related conversations over the weeks. So please continue to join us at Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right. If you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to email us at cass@casshenry.com. And please go to YouTube and follow us at Transform with Dr. Cass, because we want to make sure you and your network continue to have access to these videos. And feel free to use these in your organizations during a lunch and learn session. There are so many things that you can learn from these valuable conversations. And please come back, please engage with us. And I cannot thank you enough for being a part of this Goldilocks community to help us get things just right. So go out there and engage with individuals, knowing that every human interaction is our opportunity for transformation. Go out there and transform lives. And in that process, remember to transform yourself. Because if you don't change yourself, you are not going to be ready to pivot and evolve and take the world along for the journey.